My brother sent me a certified letter containing 5 strict conditions I had to obey just to be allowed at his wedding. The attached note read, "Complete them, and maybe you'll be worthy of standing beside us." My family begged me to humble myself, saying it was his big day. Instead, I laughed, booked a first-class flight to Bali, and mailed one final, beautifully wrapped box directly to the venue. When he opened it in front of every single guest, his face went completely white. Follow my story until the end to find out what was inside that box, and comment the city or country you are watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The wedding bells hadn't even rung yet when my own flesh and blood decided to humiliate me, but he forgot one crucial detail. I held the keys to his future. My name is Skyler. I am 31 years old, and for the past 7 years, I've built a successful, completely independent life as a digital graphic designer. I've always been the practical one in my family, the sibling who stayed quiet, worked hard, and never asked for handouts. My younger brother Riley was the exact opposite. He was the perpetual golden child, a man who coasted through life on charm, smooth talk, and our parents' blind enablement. So, when he announced his engagement to Vanessa, a woman whose taste for luxury was only matched by her staggering arrogance, I knew trouble was brewing. But I never expected what arrived on my doorstep just 3 weeks before their big day. It wasn't a standard, elegant wedding invitation. It was a cold, official-looking certified letter that required my legal signature just to accept delivery. When I cracked open the envelope, expecting a standard rehearsal dinner schedule, my jaw dropped. Inside was a crisp, typed document bearing a title that felt like a slap in the face: Attendance Protocols and Behavioral Mandates for Skyler. Vanessa's signature was at the bottom, right next to Riley's sloppy handwriting. It wasn't an invitation at all. It was an ultimatum. The attached sticky note from my brother read, "Complete them, and maybe you'll be worthy of standing beside us." I stared at the page, my heart hammering against my ribs, realizing that my own brother was treating my presence at his wedding like a conditional business transaction. I smoothed out the crisp paper on my desk, my eyes scanning the 5 demands printed in a flawless, pretentious font. Condition number 1, aesthetic realignment. Because my natural auburn hair supposedly clashes violently with Vanessa's pastel pink bridesmaid palette, I was required to dye my hair a neutral, dark brown at least a week before the ceremony. I couldn't help but stare at the screen of my computer, completely stunned by the sheer audacity. Condition number 2 was a financial ambush, the hospitality contribution. As a successful business owner, I was expected to cover the entire cost of the wedding's open bar out of pocket, a staggering $15,000, to prove my devotion to my brother's new beginning. The third condition was the most vicious: asset realignment. I was ordered to sign a legal waiver transferring my 50% share of our late grandmother's inheritance directly to Riley, so they could fund a month-long luxury honeymoon in Europe. They called it a gift of family harmony. Condition number 4 took care of my actual presence: spatial reassignment. If I complied with the first 3 rules, I would be granted entry, but I was strictly barred from sitting with the immediate family. Instead, I was assigned to table 18, a tiny table tucked away in the back corner right next to the noisy kitchen doors. Finally, condition number 5, digital isolation. I had to surrender my phone to a security guard at the venue entrance to ensure I didn't take any unauthorized, low-quality photos that might ruin Vanessa's exclusive social media reveal. They had engineered a perfect trap designed to completely drain my bank account, erase my identity, and hide me away like an embarrassing secret. The ink on that ridiculous document wasn't even dry before my phone started blowing up. My mother called first, her voice already trembling with that familiar, frantic anxiety she always got whenever Riley didn't get his way. "Skyler, please," she pleaded, barely letting me say hello. It's just 5 little things. You know how stressed Vanessa is about the wedding aesthetic. Just dye your hair and sign the inheritance papers to keep the peace. Riley is your only brother. When I told her that signing away my inheritance and paying $15,000 for an open bar wasn't keeping the peace, but financial extortion, she scoffed. She told me I was being selfish, deeply materialistic, and ruinous to a once-in-a-lifetime family milestone. An hour later, Riley's name flashed across my screen. He didn't even bother to ask how I was doing. "Look, Skyler," he said, his voice dripping with that casual golden child arrogance I had endured my entire life. "Vanessa's family is high society. We have an image to maintain. If you can't humble yourself enough to support us and follow the rules, then don't bother showing up at all. We only want people who actually care about our future standing beside us." Sitting in my office, staring at the family photos on my desk, a cold clarity washed over me. For years, I had shrunk myself to make room for Riley's massive ego, but this was the absolute breaking point. They didn't want a sister or a daughter. They wanted a submissive ATM who would willingly sit by the kitchen garbage cans. I took a deep breath, smiled to myself, and made a silent decision. I wasn't going to fight them. I was going to give them exactly what they asked for, just not in the way they expected. Instead of wasting another second arguing with my family, I opened my laptop and channeled my energy into something far more productive. Within 20 minutes, I had booked a luxury 2-week solo trip to Bali. The departure date? The exact morning of Riley and Vanessa's wedding. If they wanted me out of their sight to protect their precious high society aesthetic, I was more than happy to oblige from a 5-star resort overlooking the Indian Ocean. But I had no intention of slipping away quietly. Before heading to the airport, I spent 2 days carefully preparing a very special custom wedding present. I placed the documents into an elegant, glossy white gift box, tying it with a massive, sophisticated satin ribbon that perfectly matched Vanessa's demanding wedding colors. On top, I attached a beautifully calligraphed note that read, "To Riley and Vanessa, here is the ultimate contribution to your future. Open it on stage during the reception to share our family's true legacy with all your guests." I hired a professional high-end courier service and paid them a hefty premium to ensure the package would be hand-delivered directly to the reception venue at precisely 8 o'clock in the evening, right when the speeches were scheduled to begin. With the trap perfectly set, I boarded my first-class flight to paradise. By the time my plane touched down in Bali, the tropical sun was shining, and the warm ocean breeze immediately washed away years of family tension. I checked into my private villa, ordered a cold drink, and laid down on a lounge chair by the pool. I pulled out my primary phone, flipped it to Do Not Disturb mode, and completely silenced all calls from my parents and brother. I knew the wedding ceremony back home would be wrapping up right about now, and the grand reception was just getting started. As I closed my eyes and smiled, I knew that back in California, the countdown to my brother's ultimate reality check had officially begun. Back in California, the grand ballroom of the luxury hotel was packed to capacity with Vanessa's wealthy family, high society friends, and local business associates. Crystal chandeliers gleamed overhead, and the open bar, which Riley and Vanessa had desperately put on a high-interest credit card at the last minute, was flowing. The clock struck exactly 8, and the master of ceremonies took the microphone to announce the evening's speeches. Just as Riley and Vanessa took their seats at the center of the head table, a sharply dressed courier walked right past the security guards. He carried my glossy white gift box with its massive, immaculate satin ribbon. The courier walked straight up to the stage and handed it directly to my brother, announcing loudly through his headset that this was a priority delivery from the groom's sister, Skyler. The room buzzed with instant curiosity. Vanessa smirked, leaning over to whisper to her mother that I must have finally humbled myself, panicked about being excluded, and sent a massive, 5-figure check or a luxury registry item to beg for forgiveness. Riley, fueled by a dangerous mix of champagne and his own massive ego, saw a perfect opportunity to show off his complete dominance over his older sister. He grabbed the microphone from the podium, grinning widely at the crowd. "Everyone, look at this," he announced proudly. "My sister couldn't make it today, but it looks like she finally came to her senses and sent us the ultimate tribute." The crowd applauded as Riley dramatically yanked the satin ribbon and tore away the glossy white wrapping. But instead of a velvet jewelry box or a massive check, he pulled out a thick, heavy stack of official legal folders. The room went quiet, the murmurs of confusion rippling through Vanessa's wealthy guests. Riley frowned, opening the top folder and reading the first page. Within seconds, the smug grin completely vanished from his face, and every ounce of color drained from his skin. Vanessa leaned over, her eyes widening in fury as she looked at the letterhead. They weren't looking at a wedding gift. They were looking at a legally binding 30-day notice of restructuring and a comprehensive commercial debt buyout. What Riley had never realized was that the high-end boutique catering company he ran, along with the luxury venue lease they were currently standing in, were heavily in debt. Months ago, I had quietly used my own successful design business profits to buy out those toxic loans to protect our family's name. The documents proved that I was now his primary commercial landlord and majority lien holder. The gift also contained a copy of our grandmother's original, unaltered inheritance deed, exposing the fact that he had attempted to forge my signature to clear his debts. Riley dropped the papers onto the head table, his hands shaking violently as Vanessa began to scream at him in front of all their high society guests. 3 months later, I am sitting on the sun-drenched deck of my permanent cottage here in Bali, watching the turquoise waves crash against the shore. I sold my majority stake in Riley's toxic business to a ruthless corporate management firm, leaving him to scramble as a regular employee just to pay back his debts. Vanessa filed for annulment weeks after the wedding humiliation, and my parents finally learned that their golden child was nothing more than a fraud. For the first time in my 31 years of life, I am completely free from their manipulation. Now, I'm highly curious about you who listened to my story. What would you have done if your sibling gave you an ultimatum like this? Would you have sent the gift or just cut contact quietly? Comment below. And meanwhile, look at the screen for 2 other stories that will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching.